concern is for anyone that's operating a business. The fact of the matter is, if you look at cybersecurity, it's no different than insurance. Insurance is a way to mitigate risk. You're taking it, you're pooling it, and you're splitting it among others. But cybersecurity is nothing more than risk management by any other name, just dealing with technology.
Welcome to the 12-Minute Talks podcast presented by Mom Life and Health Insurance Agency. Learn actionable insights from our guests in just 12 minutes. Each episode features business owners, entrepreneurs, and industry experts who share their experiences and strategies.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 12-Minute Talks podcast. I'm excited to have today with us Andrew Renck from Rootpoint, where they make IT awesome. Andrew, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so definitely IT is always an interesting topic that a lot of people maybe have questions about, and you specifically do cybersecurity, correct?
That is correct. We do a lot of compliance and we do a lot of post-incident response as well. So we will come in after an incident. We prefer to deal with things before, but we will come in after as well.
Okay, awesome. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about how you got started in IT?
So a long time ago in the 1980s, as they would say, I started playing around with computers as a small child, and I grew from there. So internet started coming up. We had dial-up, if anyone remembers that, actual modems making buzzy, noisy sounds. And from there, I just grew into it. So I've been playing with computers my entire life. And from there, when I started my company in the year 2000, so I started it a little over 25 years ago. And I've been doing IT and cybersecurity ever since. Before it was even called cybersecurity, we did what was called secure systems integration. So, which is basically the same thing.
Nice. So basically, your entire life in this industry and the past 25 with your own company. That's
That's
great.
correct.
And so, can you give us an example of the type of solutions that you provide for businesses?
Yes. So for businesses, typically, like I was saying before, we would like to come in before there's an issue, and we'll look at everything. There are businesses that are regulated. They may have compliance needs like insurance or finance, or those that handle medical records, right? HIPAA. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the phrase. And so we will come in and we'll make sure that the business itself is meeting all the compliance requirements, that it meets all the standards. We can have people, outside companies, audit the work that we do and make sure that the client is doing things that at that point they will claim that they are doing, so that we've put in place so that they can do the work within the framework of the laws that they're supposed to do. In addition, we'll put together things like security plans. So how do you make sure your staff are not getting spam emails? How much time does it take for the average employee to deal with spam or junk or malware every day? Well, the answer is it depends on the kind of industry. Certain industries like title attorneys are going to get that every day. People in the real estate sphere deal with that kind of fraud because the dollar value is so high, whereas medical fraud is going to be a different kind of a thing that's handled separately, and typically is not necessarily electronic fraud, it's something else.
Okay, very, very interesting. I think these are certainly things that businesses need to hire an expert such as yourself to get done, and not just like, I don't know, go on ChatGPT and be like, hey, I need to make this HIPAA compliant, right? Have you heard any stories like that? Then you have to come in and be like, oh, let's fix all this.
Well, funny you should mention that. We actually have a number of clients in the AI space that the concern is, if you're using ChatGPT or any other large language model, you have to remember it's doing a predictive. It's going to regurgitate whatever it's heard. It's not actually thinking. It's just putting together words and phrases that it knows belong together. And so one of the things that we also have is, what happens if the data leaks out? As an example, let's suppose that you're a medical provider and you're providing information to ChatGPT and you're asking it to come up with a solution for you. For example, this person has a fever and may have a runny nose. do they have the flu, right? I'm making things up here. Well, it sounds simple on the surface, but the fact is you're dealing with protected data, medical data, and how do you properly handle it when the data goes in? How does that data go get processed by ChatGPT or any other language, any other AI, and what happens to that data after the fact? There have been a number of cases where people have given data to these models, and that data has escaped into the general realm in areas that were never intended for it to go to. So there's actually models that you can create that will keep it segregated from the rest of the models. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I often think people are like, oh, you can put all your clients' information in there and it'll give you an analysis. I'm like, no, like I can't do that because of HIPAA, of course, right? And I
Yep.
always think about even if I wouldn't be in an industry that has HIPAA, I would always think about the privacy of doing something like that because you're uploading that somewhere, some virtual cloud or I don't know what that you don't know exactly what they're doing, what they could do with that information, right? I do think it's great for other things, maybe like coming up with content or things like that, topics,
Yep.
right, that you can talk about. But I think it's important for people to know it's a tool and not let me have it solve everything, right?
It is, and if I can speak to some point on the education, I've taught cybersecurity as well at the University of Miami, and one of the concerns that we had when AI started coming out was, what are students going to be using this for? And in the very beginning was kludgy models; they didn't really work so well. And all right, now we're going to give you pen and paper tests, because that way we can stop AI from being used there. But we're also going to tailor the instruction so that if you are using technology, we want you to use it in a specific way, so that, and I've seen students attempt to cheat on tests, or I've seen audits of students doing it, and it's very obvious, and we can tell very quickly that those things are being used. And frankly, students aren't learning. It doesn't really help. It becomes a crutch. And instead of using it, as a tool to organize your thoughts, perhaps, if you're writing, right, there are people who just have it regurgitate all sorts of stuff, and it doesn't really do a whole lot for you.
Well, and let's go back into the cybersecurity because I don't want to veer off too much into AI. Um, when should somebody think about hiring like your firm? Is it obviously you mentioned before, that you can come in after something happens, but is this something every business should be thinking about? Do they need to have, a certain amount of employees?
So typically, our firm deals with businesses and general businesses, right? We don't have a specific vertical that we're necessarily tie into, although we do have a number of different verticals that we service. Typically, because of compliance driven needs, whether you are in insurance or you're in accounting or whatever it may be, typically we're not dealing with firms until they've hit about 10 employees. Underneath that, there's some gray areas in some of the rules as to what you can and can't do. There's some exemptions and carves out for single proprietor operations. In certain businesses, that is absolutely not the case. You just have to meet the requirements because that's the law. But my concern is for anyone that's operating a business. The fact of the matter is, if you look at cybersecurity, it's no different than insurance. Insurance is a way to mitigate risk. You're taking it, you're pooling it, and you're splitting it among others. But cybersecurity is nothing more than risk management by any other name, just dealing with technology. Many people simply do not. And the other thing is, people have assumed compliance. They assume that the other party is doing the right thing. And I can tell you from having looked at any number of different businesses and any number of, hey, we've had an issue, that's absolutely not the case. In fact, it's probably one of the worst things is that everyone assumes that what the other business is doing or what the other entity is doing is correct, and it's oftentimes not.
Right. Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is that it's important to have something really tailor-made to your business and to your needs.
Correct.
Hmm.
Yeah, different businesses are going to have different needs. If you're a one-person law firm, that's going to be very different than if you've got an accounting firm with 50 people on staff. If you're running a technology company, you may have a lot of intellectual property that you've developed or your company has developed that you need to protect, right? There are different groups that may want to have access to that information. In fact, there was a case this week between two different recruiting companies or two different payroll companies where one had actually planted a corporate spy at the other one. And they were using that spy that the company B had hired and was running searches against all the different things internally so they could steal data from that company. So is that a cybersecurity thing? It absolutely is. It's called an insider threat risk or an insider risk. So, and I've seen it in real life more than one time.
It sounds like a good plot for a movie, though. Like we put the person in there, but they really work for somebody else. Like, you know.
Like I said, I've seen it especially when businesses are getting ready to go through a sale or a merger and acquisition.
Mhm.
I've seen it multiple times there, although I have also seen one of the reasons that certain companies will have prohibitions on going to competitors with their sales is they don't know which way, whether they're protecting themselves or they're protecting the other company, because frankly, you never know if you're hiring a salesperson from another organization that's a competitor. Are they a plant? How do you validate? Do you even really want to go through that headache to find out? Is it worth it? The answer is probably not.
Yeah, totally. And so, Andrew, how can somebody get in contact with you? They would like more information about your services, maybe a review on their cybersecurity.
Sure, absolutely. You can go to our website, which is www.rootpoint, rootpoint.com, and you can fill out the form on our website. You can also email manage@rootpoint.com with any requests that you have there, and our staff are here, and we operate 24/7, so that you are allayed of and assuaged of any fears that you might have.
Fantastic. And like always, I will have all of the links down below for those that are interested in following up with our guest today. And I just wanted to quickly introduce myself for those of you that don't know who I am. I'm Lorena Tomasini, and I'm the owner of Mom Life and Health Insurance Agency, where we help families and businesses with their financial protection needs. And Andrew, I do have one last question for you here. What
Sure.
would you say is a good book for maybe somebody that wants to learn a little bit more about cybersecurity or things like that?
I have a number of different suggestions depending on where they want to jump into, because cybersecurity is such a broad area. If you want to understand, there was a very good book written by a guy named Cliff Stollard, who talked about the very early beginnings of the computer technology and hacking. And phone phreaking and hacking spaces. It covered a lot of concepts that are from the very early 80s. Oh, there was a 75-cent accounting error on a phone bill, which led to an international hunt for a West German hacker who was selling secrets to the Soviets, all because someone noticed an error on a phone bill in the 1980s.
That sounds like an interesting book for sure to read. It's I was watching a video the other day and it was talking about how like Apple wouldn't have existed if Steve Jobs didn't do like you called it phone hacking or something like that.
Phone phreaking. Yep. And
Oh, that.
yep, phone phreaking. They actually made little boxes called blue boxes, and
Hmm.
they had special buttons on them, and they could emit certain tones. And simply by holding it up to a receiver, you could actually dial those special tones and get free phone calling. In fact, that's actually covered in that book as well.
Nice. Well, Andrew, it's been great having you today on the 12-Minute Talks podcast. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I mean that's pretty much it. If you're interested, we're more than happy to help you. Businesses of any size, we scale all the way up. We've done work for many Fortune 500 companies. You just wouldn't know it because we don't talk about our clients.
Security first, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the 12-Minute Talks podcast, presented by Mom Life and Health Insurance Agency. If you enjoyed today's conversation, remember to share and subscribe. Connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Remember to make it a great day.